Hello and welcome to a short discussion about Cloud Infrastructure Entitlement Management, often known by its acronym CIEM, which is pronounced CIEM, by the way, just to make sure that you're paying attention. Joining me today to discuss CIEM is DJ Morimano. DJ is Director of Identity and Access Management Technologies, and he is also a leader in our advisory practice. So DJ, welcome. Let's jump right into it. Maybe you can start with defining what CIEM is and what some of the key components are within CIEM.
Yeah, thanks. I'll definitely jump in, and it refers to the administration of accesses and permissions that are assigned to identities, and not just human identities. When I say identities, I mean an all-encompassing category of identities. And we could have a whole separate talk on what that means, but the reality is it's users and services and applications, all the above, with the twist that it's focused on the cloud environment. So, you may think here administration of access and permissions and identities and think kind of a traditional like system like an IGA or some traditional access management system. But the reality is those traditional systems aren't always poised to truly understand the access and the breadth of access within cloud infrastructure and the way that it's categorized and the flux and necessity to be so agile and granular in nature that the cloud demands. So at its core, think of it as a better, more modern approach within the cloud ecosystem or the cloud environment or the cloud-centric environment to manage identities and their access and their permissions across multiple infrastructure and multiple series of entitlements.
That's a great summary. And DJ, are there key components or fundamentals that are part of CIEM?
Yeah, I like the term fundamentals because a lot of what CIEM brings to the table isn't necessarily new. It's kind of an evolutionary way of looking at and processing, disciplines and categories that have already been at play in our space for quite some time. We talk about visibility and discovery is probably the biggest thing. If you look at these other solutions and traditional solutions, and I say traditional solutions on purpose, I'm not saying they're bad, but the way that they look at things in a traditional way is to really determine what, entitlements and groups and accesses that identities have. But the way that they're looking at that doesn't always give the visibility and the discovery across the cloud environment with the same granular scope that it would if it was looking at an on-prem or a siloed decentralized system. So the main thing there is visibility and discovery. It allows us to really know what we don't know across multiple cloud environments, multiple entitlements, multiple accounts. It provides more robust policy management when it comes to risk and analysis of what's out there. It gives us a better view and categorizing those because, privileges are everywhere. So when we look at something that's considered to be overprivileged, we obviously need a baseline for what overprivileged means. And we're in a world that we can argue that any level of access is privileged access because of the nature of the world that we live in. If you really look at it from that perspective, it's going to give you the capability, just to summarize, of looking at all of the accounts and instances that you have out there, whether it's AWS, GCP, Azure, et cetera. There's a few others out there for sure, giving you that view of who's out there and what's out there, giving you that view not only of what they have access to, but how they have that access and what that access is being used for. So, reporting and compliance is a pretty heavy piece of it. And then obviously with all of that data, gives us a more automated way to remediate based on our needs and requirements and use cases, which is going to all be driven by what we've collected and what we viewed. So nothing I said there is revolutionary by any means. It's all fundamental, as we've kind of discussed. It's foundational, but it's doing so in a way that's more adaptable to a more modernized cloud environment than a traditional on-prem environment.
Yeah, it might not be revolutionary, but gaining a complete understanding of your cloud environment for many companies, I think once they see how their perception might not meet reality, it almost could feel revolutionary, right? Now let's talk some, DJ, about the common questions that we get. And they're often related to the role that CIEM plays within identity and how that relates to the more understood areas of IGA and PAM, for example.
what it really does is enhance your IEM program. It's an addition to those solutions. It's not a replacement of those solutions. Everyone talks about that single pane of glass or that central view, for quite some time. That's been lacking, to be honest with you, in the cloud space. So it adds that new pane or that view into that world, and then it allows us to have more dynamic adoption and inheritance across this dynamic and ever-moving world, which is the cloud. If you really think about the role that it's playing, is it's allowing us to finally put proper visibility and control in the cloud realm for our identity programs, which frankly, a lot of the traditional, more mainstay solutions, as they sit today, and we'll probably talk about this, they're evolving and changing, but as they sit today, really don't look at the cloud the same way. They leave a gap, and that's what CIEM does. It fulfills that gap.
You mentioned the identity ecosystem, so let's talk about that. It's a space that has always evolved very fast, but I think that's especially true over the last year or so, and you're certainly on the front lines of that. So talk about what you're seeing and how the market is evolving and thinking about CIEM.
A couple of years ago, nobody was talking about CIEM. Everyone knew that there was issues within the cloud environments, and we had this need for cloud infrastructure entitlements management. But at the end of the day, CIEM wasn't part of the normal identity discussion and cybersecurity discussion. But if you look at what's happening in the landscape, if you look at some of the vendors out there that provide those traditional identity products, they're all moving in the direction of having a CIEM offering. And I think that's just testament to say this is an issue that the industry is recognizing, and vendors are coming in like they traditionally do to try to provide an answer. There isn't one magic bullet. There isn't one answer for all. There isn't necessarily a product better than another product. I'll always argue you never start the conversation around the product. You start the conversation around your challenges and your approach and the things that your environment needs, and talk about your gaps. And then let's talk about the tool and how the tool can help. And maybe you don't know your gaps. So we come in a lot of times and do this assessment, and through our assessment, we'll do a scan of your environment and we'll build you up that picture so you can identify those gaps and ultimately lead you down the path of a tool.
Yeah, there's probably no better indicator of the importance of a topic than when some of the big players in the space start to address it and spend their own money on it, right? So as part of your work in the advisory practice, DJ, you talk to a lot of organizations about CIEM and help them address it. What are some of the typical challenges and the roadblocks that you see companies face when it comes to addressing CIEM?
Yeah, one of the problems that frankly is still an issue and challenges is CIEM is still new. So one of the challenges is just making sure that the organization understands that CIEM is something that, they need in their program and what it does and what it is. And once we get past that, right, once there's some sort of understanding, one of the other things is a misconception of the fact that their cloud environments are already secure. They're already, strapped with armor, and they're ready to go to battle with all those threats that are out there. It's getting past the fact that they may not be as secure as they think they are. And what CIEM helps do is actually start to highlight those areas. So once we can kind of get them to understand that they need to take on at least some sort of discovery of what is really in their environment and what really people have and what they're really doing with it, it almost always turns out that we're highlighting something they weren't aware of, which brings me to the kind of another challenge, which is the lack of visibility. I can't count how many times I talk to an organization and they're not aware even of how many AWS accounts they have because developers have spun things up, or some group has spun something up, or they're unaware of what their application accounts are being used for, or the overprivilege of certain entitlements and certain things in the organization. And they're just, this unawareness is an issue and a challenge to overcome. And that's one of the things CIEM tries to do, is at least give you some sort of discovery mechanism to give you a better picture, a huge leg up. One final challenge I just want to throw in there is, if we can get past all of this and we can get to the point we've got CIEM in the environment and we're starting to find and remediate things, there's an ownership crisis going on in the identity space as a whole. Who owns identity? Who's responsible for the remediation? Who's responsible for the traditional sense of onboarding and offboarding? And we're already struggling with, do we have enough resources? Do we need to go manage services? Do we need X? Do we need Y? And now we're throwing something else in the bucket, and people are saying, how can I do that? I'm already strapped for resources. So that's another challenge that we typically talk through. And when we come in and do advisories, we hit every one of these at some level and actually go well beyond these challenges to help discover, everything that needs to be at the table, build a proper narrative around it, and kind of help you sell your program and get value out of it.
Yep. And that is a perfect lead into talking about the work that you and the advisory team does. So I believe that we now include CIEM in most of our advisory work. Can you talk a little bit about how you approach that work and how CIEM fits into it?
Yeah, so a lot of times when we come in and we do our advisory work, we already know that every organization is going to be unique and not every approach is going to work for everyone. We very much pride ourselves on making sure that we're not delivering something that's cookie cutter, because that frankly isn't going to work. So when we come in, we're trying to identify what's unique, what's the standout, what's then the drivers and the challenges, everything we've already discussed. Get that in some sort of narrative and some sort of view. But the reality is once all that's done, once that's on paper and we hand you a report, I can't count how many times I've come in to an organization. They're like, well, here's the roadmap or the report or a maturity from another organization. And that's great, but it doesn't tell us what to do. It doesn't give us the actual story and journey that we need to go down. It doesn't even tell us usually typically where to start. So we want to lead you through this advisory effort, with just that, an actionable roadmap, an actionable strategy, a paint by numbers journey that you can take on. And obviously there's going to be adjustments as that occurs. And in order to do this, we've learned that we've got some good ways to discuss the traditional, avenues and disciplines of identity to provide that. But when it comes to CIEM, so we've incorporated bringing in a scan and a discovery process and an evaluation process to really give you that picture of how bad, or in some cases we're surprised how good you're managing CIEM, and really add that into the picture. So if you solely want us to focus on CIEM and really see that picture, we can, but a lot of times we're bringing that in holistically in a larger discovery so that we can show you what that program should look like and give you a good sense of where your program is today, and obviously give you the building blocks and the strategy and tools to, move it into tomorrow.
Well, maybe we can end with a piece of advice to companies that are thinking about addressing CIEM. They understand that they need to, but they aren't sure the best way to start or where to start.
So I know this is a pretty short talk and discussion, and I'm always happy to kind of, go much deeper than this. So if anyone's listening and they want to have a deeper discussion, there's a lot of context that we can go down, but, to just leave with a few key points of recommendations, don't just have a knee-jerk reaction and jump into this. Is the first thing. Have that strategy, have that approach, have that understanding before you take any actual action. And obviously we can help with that. And there's other means and ways to get that information. But we've done this many times, and we've got kind of a general approach and a specialized approach depending on what the need is. Although we're talking CIEM and the cloud and the evolution and revolution that's going on with automation and AI and all of this fun stuff that's out there. At the end of the day, you're still going to be impacting people and their processes when you bring tools like CIEM in, and when you talk about identity in general. And understand that a lot of times we need to make sure we partner with the business, and we need to partner with those that are providing us the capital and the funding to make some of this stuff happen. And I like to say that security a lot of times and IT a lot of times is a mirror of the business. When they bring something in, we've got to support that. We've got to secure that. The road needs to go the other way. When we try to bring in new practices and new approaches, we need to make sure that they're at the table to give the proper input. And I think CIEM really has that major impact, because if you're starting to remediate and remove access all of a sudden, or starting to see what people are doing, it's easier for us to point fingers and be like, why'd you do that? Why'd you spin that up? What's going on here? And although they're good questions, our approach is really important.
Sorry, DJ, I didn't mean to step on you there. I was just going to say that, yes, it's very easy to forget that projects like these literally can touch every member of the organization and affect them. So I know that managing that aspect of the project is key to the work that you and your team do. So DJ, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. As DJ said, he and many other members of our team are more than happy to jump on a phone call, help answer some of your questions, give you direction, and that's whether it's related to CIEM or anything else identity related. We cover all areas from IGA, PAM, advisory, managed services. You need help, we're here to give it. So thanks for listening, thanks for your time, and take care.